Welcome to Trash Talk.
As you might know, because I didn't give you any questions to think about or prepare in advance, so we're just extracting from your brain whatever we might be able to find.
Might have to look pretty hard.
So this may be like a podcast, and we call our podcast Trash Talk.
Trash Talk.
So welcome to this episode of Trash Talk. You got William Brinker and our founder and my father, Bill Brinker. And we've had a number of questions come in that they like a little dialogue around. So yeah, approaching a Phil face here. This is something that I've been doing since I was probably 10 years old, just driving around looking at landfills with my dad. So whenever we'd go on quote unquote a vacation and we'd see a big mountain sticking out of the ground that didn't belong, we would follow it. We'd always end up in places like this.
I got some very green kids.
Just part of what we did. But yeah, there's just mountains of trash coming in truck by truck. So you started by putting little flares in to help control gas issues.
And then,
but I say why? Like why did you? Because what you were before this, you were selling countertops, laminates and stuff, right? So what took you from selling laminates to getting in the landfill gas business?
well, that company, our energy costs were 3 times our direct labor. We had 500 employees. And so I was always looking for a way to find less expensive energy. And there wasn't anybody willing to cut you a break.
So, what was your initial vision of Enerdyne?
Make the world a better place.
So you're just talking about Asheville and really the early days of Asheville, which, ended up really being a success because, what was it, probably a decade later, we redeveloped that project and brought North Carolina's first NC Green Power project online, I think in 2006, maybe? It was 2008, somewhere thereabouts.
I think it was 6.
Yeah. North Carolina had just developed a program to incentivize folks to buy renewable energy. And you could buy a power block on your pay extra as a consumer. And they had sold power blocks, but didn't actually have supply. And so
The problem was, they'd sold it with no supply.
Yeah. So we brought the first NC Green Power project onto the state.
So they quickly said, how fast can you get one up?
All right. Next question from the audience. How have you seen the landfill gas industry change over the years?
The credits that you're working for are actually worth money. There are a lot of companies, whether they're cosmetic, but usually very consumer oriented, or people that make a whole bunch of money and have, like Apple or Google, and they want to be green. They understand the concept.
Yeah, the landscape of the landfill gas to energy industry has changed significantly over the last 35 years. I mean, if you think about it, in the early 90s when you first started doing projects, you were one of a few people that were doing projects just anywhere in the country. Most of those projects were direct use projects where you were kind of blending landfill gas with natural gas in direct use applications.
Yeah, usually boilers.
Boiler, incinerator.
Yeah.
And then I feel like that kind of was the common trend until the early 2000s, and that's when we started to see power projects emerge and started doing some turbine projects and energy projects and really getting onto the power grid. And then I think
we were learning what siloxanes were, and that glass was just coating everything.
Yeah, learned a lot about challenges on treatment, implementing new technologies.
Yeah, if you didn't do it, your project was done.
Especially on a turbine project.
Or a project like Honeywell.
Oh yeah, because it was coating the inside of the boilers.
We're coating the tubes. They knew what the temperature was going to be, and they didn't say that was an issue.
So a lot of lessons learned over the years.
A lot of lessons learned.
The hard way, just leading with the chin to some extent, because a lot of the projects were just new in class.
Yeah.
People hadn't done applications like this.
And the problem was that the engines weren't the right size. If you were Cat 3516 or even the 3520, they didn't make enough power because the utility only sees whole megawatts, not parts of. And so the worst case would be to just not quite get to a megawatt and you get nothing, or not quite get to 2 megawatts. So we put speed increasers on the engines to make them produce more.
And then
that's where you put another gear into it. Sort of like putting overdrive on a car.
And this was on most of the internal combustion engines kind of that we were putting in, really over I'll say that really started happening in 2007, 8-ish through maybe 2014. And then that's really when the industry took another major shift and renewable natural gas became the buzz. And still is, right? It's what we're building right now. You checking to see if you're wearing an RNG hat? That one's a Tobacco Road one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, as far as like how's the industry changed? I mean, this is me recapping, and you can probably validate. But from 91 to probably 2000, there were only a handful of people that were even aware of the space, much less developing projects. And as you look at our industry groups, I mean, there were a handful of people, maybe a dozen or two at best, that were really involved in advancing the space. Yeah. And then as renewable energy credits really started to evolve,
become worth something.
Yeah, and predominantly on the power side, because before that there were tax credits and a few things that were available, Section 29s,
but they weren't
very valuable.
They weren't very valuable.
But the industry started to gain some traction and attention really in probably 2006-ish, and got a lot of momentum with the Stimulus Act. And since then, we've seen the industry go from a handful of people to several handfuls of people, to now the Renewable Natural Gas Coalition that we're part of has thousands of members, and these are conferences. And if you go back to SWANA, I mean, or the Landfill Methane Outreach Program, you were one of literally a handful of people in a room sitting in a round table talking about what you were doing. And now there's, more than a dozen conferences throughout the year where they've got sold out crowds of 1,000 or more.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you're not around it for a while.
You've been out of the game for a couple of years, but it's got nothing but bigger. And really you're a creator of much of the game. For sure, an innovator.
That's what gets you in the Hall of Flame.
Yeah. My dad was actually inducted into the Solid Waste Association of North America's Hall of Flame in 2006 for a Lifetime Achievement Award.
What was that landfill out in Kansas City? Deffenbaugh.
Yeah, Deffenbaugh, big site. That's how our good friends, the Moros, got into the industry.
But I built all the little players on that site.
Yeah. Actually, on that, I was telling you, I pulled a few pictures out of the stack just the other day. Some fun ones to flip through. I'll go quick to a couple of these. I was showing some folks, paper chart recorder, how we used to record things. Some good pictures of just trenching and excavation. Look at that handsome devil. You recognize that guy?
Yeah. Still upset that people couldn't understand what was happening.
I think that's in Catawba.
Because they'd go to the landfill and they'd light the top of the well and just try and make a little flare for themselves out of the well head.
Yeah, that doesn't work so good, does it?
No, it melts.
Yeah, there's a gym from 99. I noticed that was Asheville.
That was huge.
Yeah. Here's another funny one.
That was the challenge.
Yeah, you look.
These were the people that didn't understand that the take or pay meant you had to take it.
Yeah.
Or pay money.
This is one I wanted to share with the guys. We're actually going to do a demonstration of pulling pipe later that we're going to try to capture some video of. And there you are pulling pipe with Bruce.
Yeah. Bruce was our Suburban.
Yeah, Bruce is a car. This is you, Green Tree, Pennsylvania. First Air Liquide project.
Wow.
2002. One of the first membrane renewable natural gas projects that ever happened in the country before renewable natural gas was even a coined term. There's you and Joel.
That was my brother-in-law. We were lacking good operators, and he knew how to operate.
There's one of you and McNabb and Steve White. And there's John King.
Wish he was still alive.
Yeah, he passed away a couple years ago. That's one of our operators. Good guy. We're
trying to teach people to not just be drivers, but to be true operators.
That's what leachate looks like on your hand.
But at least they don't drink it leachade. It certainly isn't anything like orangeade or lemonade.
There's Barry. You were asking about Barry earlier.
Yeah. Is that a Cleaver Brooks on his right?
It's a blue engine. I would have said a Deutz, but it was
yeah, sorry. If it's Barry, they should have been Yenbachers.
Pulled several out. Yeah, but that wasn't a Yenbacher container.
No.
And that's an early picture at Catawba. But here's some of these little flares that you were talking about.
Yeah. These little tiki torches would be wherever there would be a community, buildings.
You guys were putting them in for remediation to keep
children,
gas pressure.
Yeah. We knew that you could make the industry be very short if you had an accident.
I snagged that one just because this was Enerdyne's very first company car.
Yeah, that's been on probably more landfills than any vehicle, except one probably owned by a waste management guy.
Oh, what was that? Probably a late 80s Bronco 2?
Yeah, that's probably been on over 100 landfills along the East Coast.
All right, here you are working on some pipeline. I'm guessing Waverly?
Yeah, it's a landfill that was huge, but they got greedy and decided to not expand it.
It's another one of those little flares.
And it took a slide. So it's a lot like the Rumpke one in Cincinnati where it went out over I-275.
Walking the line?
Yeah. So this was a long pipeline going under the Cape Fear River. And so you had to make everything up on one side. And once you got going, you had to keep going. You didn't want to get it all stuck. I want to say this is 16-inch pipe under the Cape Fear River. Yeah, this is pretty wild. So I just, so you're pulling that hundreds of feet. To go down, you had to be not only start on one bank off the edge, you had to be like 27 feet below the bottom of the water. So to take all the soundings and whatever, it was an interesting job.
And look at those people.
Reed Cheatham?
Reed Cheatham.
Oh, wow. That's my mom and dad.
The Buick made it.
He'd be like 109.
The Buick ended up on a landfill.
By the way, she coached a basketball team when she was in Middletown that was state champions.
I'm just going to throw all these back in here for right now. But yeah, a few good ones.
I could do it, but William was good. William led a lot of the crew stuff getting going. I knew that I was best at talking to county commissioners, but to begin with, he ran the people side, and I lined up the business opportunities.
My dad was good at shaking the trees. And go out there and talk to a brick wall till it said, all right, here's my gas right.
I did that a few times.
I will answer the question for him. He was definitely the deal guy. Loved to put together deals and was very good at it, and very creative too, and finding ways to make projects happen.
Make the burners work, or find the person who could build us the burner that would work. You never know what's going to happen, but all of my kids know and have been on a lot of landfills. So, there were certain deadlines in which tax credits were no longer going to be there, and you had to have certain equipment in place to be considered. And Sarah, Mary Allison, Opie wasn't born yet, Walter wasn't born yet, but Sarah could climb about anything. So she'd climb up the wellhead and stick the equipment in. The thing that was hard was waste management needed to have readings every, I don't know how often they had to have them for their reports. And Sarah could climb up the 8-inch pipe, get to the top, drop the meter inside, and be able to show the reading.
I think everybody's probably touched it at some point.
I think you learned to drive in a landfill.
I did. I learned to drive when I was 12 on a landfill.
You didn't. You can't record that.
And I was definitely operating equipment before I was 16.
Blame Barry Edwards.
What would you say, one or some of your greatest achievements have been in the landfill gas industry?
I guess the 23-mile pipeline. We'd started a long pipeline, and I didn't know that Southern Virginia hadn't had rain for a couple of years. And then pretty soon we found that over 8 miles of the route was in swamps in the middle of nowhere. And so all of a sudden there was water everywhere. And being out on sometimes when you're hearing, I won't call it lions and tigers and bears, but we certainly had alligators.
So the 23-mile pipeline took over, which was a several-year project. It was a direct-use pipeline, so we were sending gas directly from the landfill in Waverly, Virginia, to a Honeywell nylon plant.
I should have built a hotel, since we had over 200 man hotel nights.
You had to get over 100 private easements for that pipeline.
Yeah.
Whereas we're building here at the Ensign project, where this is going to be a 7.5 mile pipeline, and we've got about 15 easements. So 100 easements
it's a lot.
It's quite the feat for a private company. There is no eminent domain. You just have to be really nice.
Yeah.
And persistent.
I knocked on a lot of doors. I've been met by Dobermans and you name it.
I would say that's definitely a, just growing up around you, not necessarily, I'm just speaking on the business front, but is persistence. Have always been incredibly persistent to get things done. If one door closed and wasn't an option, you figured out where a window was somewhere else to crawl through.
Yeah.
And sometimes if the door closed, you just keep knocking. I'd say it's actually probably one of the things that we're missing the most right now with you being retired is that person.
That door knocker?
That door knocker. The person that's always out there shaking the trees, knocking on doors 24/7. That's making the stop when they're on their family vacation to see if there's an opportunity. If you were given advice to somebody in the industry, what would that advice be?
Don't get any NOVs because they follow you from state to state and region to region. You can't pick up NOVs in California and not be penalized for them in Kansas.
An NOV is a notice of violation, doing something that's not in compliance.
Yeah. Or another thing is always do the right thing.
I would agree with that one. I think that's something that we do a pretty good job of living by.
Was there like a pivotal moment or decision that comes to mind that really gave you momentum to take the business to the next level?
Yeah, William came into the business. A shout out to Yenbacher. A shout out to Caterpillar. They built what we needed. And once they understood why we needed it, they realized that they needed to make some change. When we got into the industry, we didn't realize that from the power standpoint, they only paid for whole megawatts. So we made sure that their 760 or even 680 kilowatt engine could produce a whole megawatt. And at first we started to do it with speed increasers. Then eventually they would build something that would fit the bill, because they realized that there was a better opportunity in that.
Yeah, really, I mean, over time, we've had dozens of long-standing relationships, with both, public and private landfill host. I mean, we've had super successful relationships with a lot of municipalities all over the country. A lot of the big waste companies, Waste Management, Waste Connections, where we are today, Waste Corporation of America, I say before they became Green for Life. Lots of partners on the supply chain side of things, flares, compressors, blowers. I mean, you've already mentioned probably our two biggest, engine suppliers, which were, Yenbacher and Caterpillar. I think a lot of that relationship and what we collaborated with over the years with Caterpillar is pretty impressive. Or even if we look at, I'll say our more recent collaborations with RNG projects, with loci controls on automated wellheads, which, I think when we first heard the thought, we thought was voodoo.
Yeah.
And a crazy idea, but it does work.
It does work, especially when you're out in a flat area with a big high landfill like this. And when the winds come across, everything changes. And the loci works real good.
With Avonic, our membrane packager, now being able to be a membrane supplier.
And the nice thing about it, getting someone new, they would make us what we wanted.
Is there anything you'd like to say to staff, employees, or I'll say our team members, family members, landfill group family members?
We love your ability to stick with it, to want to get up in the morning and go in the middle of nowhere.